Seeing none, let's move to first semester school culture and activity. I'd like to welcome our deans up here and John Passarella. John has promised me he will not cry tonight, and he's been limited in time, so. Yeah, he promised me that too, so next time. So.
Also lied, I told you it'd be brief.
Okay, yeah.
But to begin with, these are, we appreciate having an opportunity to speak to all of you this evening. There's 4 individuals sitting up here, but truly Ms. Mola, my assistant, and Ms. Spry, Mr. Sibley's assistant, play a key role in not just the collection of data, but numerous tasks throughout the office that allow us to get to this point, so I want to acknowledge them as well. I want to take a moment to thank the board for the changes that you have approved during your tenure that have had a positive impact both on the office and the building and allowed us to, in my opinion, get to the point where these numbers reflect those, and that is the security guard now at the front entrance, which is critical, and it impacts a lot regarding attendance. It's hard to put a number on it and exactly what it does, but we're addressing students arriving in a capacity that's very different than welcoming somebody. It's holding them accountable, and that's really important, besides keeping the building safe. And then the gentleman to my left, Mr. Dugetti, having his presence in the office for the past 4 years, I can't even begin to tell you the role he's played and responsibilities that he has taken on and have been given over that time period. I'm able to be in the cafeteria while Mr. Dugetti and Mr. Sibley, since he's off 4th hour, are able to kind of maintain that office and sustain life, so that's critical. And Ms. Sullivan, the addition also, working with Apex and our seniors, it's critical and pushing towards graduation. So we'll get into that at a later meeting, but the 2 of those individuals have really made a difference in the office. Behavioral interventionist, another individual that has really assisted us when dealing with students with discipline issues, the Hope Mentoring Program, and then JKB, instilling in students negotiation skills. And we do other things like, bringing in gang and alcohol prevention speakers to do that, so to address that. So in front of you, I know you have the first semester comparison suspension report, so there may be some data in there that triggers some conversation, so I'll turn to the board first.
We have attendance as our first.
Okay, I'll flip that over then. Mr. Sibley will address that.
Okay, with our attendance, our numbers are pretty similar to what they have been the prior year. We do have a decrease in our cuts, and that's with Mrs. Spry being back full-time in the attendance office. And then with all the other interventions that we do have, we are dealing with parents more. We're calling parents more. I know Laura has been calling parents, Neil has been calling parents, I've been calling parents. We've been trying to set up meetings and getting these parents in. We also use student services with our small team meetings. We bring the parents in, the counselors discuss with the students how relevant attendance is towards graduation. We also have the SIT team meeting where we bring Pam in and get other ideas and move it up a different level. I'd like to give kudos to Riverside PD and Brookfield PD. Sometimes we can't find kids, we send them over to the house. The police will respond back to me that same day and give me that information, whether those students are at the house or not at the house, or they can give me a location where I can go and try to contact those students. But I think all in all, we're doing a good, solid job in dealing with the key issues of getting kids to school.
The one other issue I want to talk about is the tardies. There is an increase. The majority of our tardies that we receive is during first period. Students arriving to school late. The past, it was 2 years ago, Pam and I, we sent a letter home to the parents explaining how important it is to come to school on time, not just dropping students off at 7:59, get them here a little bit sooner. They still need to go to their locker, get their books, come to class. We're still kind of having that issue with students arriving to school late. In the past, we've had myself, Dave, Mr. Pasarella, security members at the door. When students would come late, we'd hand them detention, then they have a lunch detention. We've kind of pulled back on that because we want to make sure that the security guards are in the hallways, maintaining the safety of the building. So we've kind of had last year, obviously this year we're up a little bit because we're not pushing so hard with detentions. In the past couple of years, we really pushed hard with students being late in the hallways or coming late, we'd hand them detention. So it was kind of a deterrent to coming to school late. So that's kind of the reason why we're up a little bit in tardies, but we're going to meet probably in the next week or two once we're done with the handbook, coming up with some ideas of bringing those tardies back down.
Is there anything special about that month of October?
Yep, 100%. I want to defer to Mr. Dugetti and Mr. Sibley.
On discipline or
It's
on?
about the cuts and the tardies, I mean, particularly
You know,
the cuts.
I mean, I'm just inferring, it's kind of like the honeymoon period. You know, the students get into school, they start the September, they're all raring to go, they kind of figure out their groove, where they're going, and they just have a tendency, they just start falling back into their old ways of, you know, getting on it.
Motivation.
And then by the time October, we start seeing some of the numbers, and we start seeing, oh, there's a spike in this and spike in that. We meet as a team, and then we say, we need to get on this period, we need to make sure we speak to these students, and then they go back down in November, December, we have low numbers. And then, you know, we start January, this year, we've actually, starting January, well, since we've got so many snow days, our numbers are great.
So our increase was in September, not October, right? In cuts? The 959 to 1,030?
Looks like that.
Because in
Yeah.
October, it looks like it went down significantly.
But it's still a big number.
Yeah.
I mean, the 2 years, October, those are big numbers.
Yeah, the numbers themselves overall are large numbers.
And just so if I understand the math correctly, like where it says periods, so under excused periods, if a parent calls their kid in for the day, that would be 7 of the
Yes.
34, 35.
Yes, 7 periods. And the way the system, the Skyward breaks the information down, the Skyward breaks everything down into periods. So a student can miss 3 periods in the morning because he was at the doctor, and then he'll come in and spend the rest of the day. I believe that's why it does. We can't count the whole days for every student.
Now, we increased Lori Sullivan as an assistant dean this year to assist 1 period, like Neil does 1 period. From seeing this, is there still a need for assistance with attendance, Mr. Sibley?
As we're addressing this, you know, the numbers are always going to be there. The more support we have, the more aggressive we can be at taking care of the students. There are certain students that we can't not get into buildings at certain times during the day. We work very hard. I know Lori and Neil and I all work very hard at addressing this with the families. Our belief is we don't want to drop them after a certain amount of days. We want these students to get into the building because we want them to have their diploma. So the more support we can have with addressing those students and getting them in the building, the better off we'll be.
So to answer the question, yes, that is critical because obviously the attendance has a direct correlation with behavior.
And
If
graduation.
they're not in school, when they come back in, they're disruptive, they're not in sync with what's taking place, so it has a rippling effect. If you can address it progressively in a proactive manner, and in a timely manner, that is critical. And with the addition of Lori, who is really focusing a lot on our seniors and is pushing towards graduation and addressing that and working with Apex, that has made a difference with those individuals. Neil has continued to do what he's doing with the freshmen, but also has taken on leadership responsibilities. It gives me an opportunity to leave during 4th hour, get into that cafeteria, which is where a lot of action takes place, and the office doesn't stop functioning. You would think it won't stop with just an individual, just in Dave, but there's so much activity going on that with Neil being there in off 4th hour has just made a huge impact.
The board's goal for average daily attendance is 95%. We're sitting at 94
Yes.
at the end of the first semester. Is there initiatives you'll be implementing to try to help us get to that 95%?
Yeah, we're working on trying to get these students in, like I said, with small teams and sit teams, going through the process sometimes legally, going through the process by issuing truancy tickets. We're being aggressive with this, but we have several students, like I said, that miss many, many days, and we just don't want to drop them. We want to work with the families and try to get them back into school, and in some ways that's adverse to our numbers and our daily attendance rates because we don't want to lose these kids. We want these kids to get through school, so we're trying to be proactive. We could look into trying to find these kids earlier and start working with these families earlier. That may affect our numbers down the line, but as of now, we're trying to be on top of them right now and trying to get them through. We're looking at the graduation for these students because I know it'll help them in their future lives after they leave RB.
For some of these kids, these young men and women, it's Apex that has been the opportunity that hasn't been there in the past. They struggle with, the 7-period day. And they are going to impact our numbers, 100%. And so therefore, by creating that alternative intervention, where in fact, if it's applicable to them, that's where Lori comes in, working with those individuals who are, the upperclassmen, specifically the seniors. It's everything. It's either hit or miss with them, because for some of them, this is their last shot. We're really excited about that opportunity with what Apex is doing right now. So Lori's monitoring and working with that.
Just so the board remembers, Apex is what we approved, and this year we added a period of personnel for it. And those are the licenses we purchased to help students that were credit deficient to get on pace for graduation, or in the summer to make up the 1 or 2 courses they need to graduate to overall help our graduation rate. So that's Apex.
And Lori has met with several families and has been very effective with those families in getting those students here in school and getting them into the Apex program, working towards the graduation.
We're very fortunate to have Lori in that role because she taught a lot of these kids when they were younger. And so she has relationships with those kids. And so that's helpful to have her there to try and usher them and getting them back. But that's a process. Some of these kids are school, avoidant, school phobic. Some of them are, involved with drugs, have gone into rehab. But like Mr. Sibley said, if we drop them, then our average daily attendance rate goes up, but then our graduation rate goes down. So it's, trying to keep them. Remember that we have that 5-year adjusted cohort graduation rate in order to, as an incentive that the state gave us, even though we kept these kids anyway, to try and adjust that graduation rate. But it's very difficult. The behavioral interventionist has been helping with that, so we're trying to do 2 things at once. Fix the problem with the older kids and try and address, the younger kids so they don't develop those patterns. And then with our summer program that we're going to be offering, some of the summer options, it will help kids not dig such a deep hole. They'll be able to, hopefully with the 2 semesters in the summer, be able to make up more than 1 half semester credit. So a lot of these kids have multiple failures and then they start giving up. So it's we're trying to give them more options to be hopeful so they come back in the game.
It's a difficult place to be. Is it the numbers, is it the student? And we understand, we're not about numbers, but it is about those students succeeding and moving on. And for some of those kids, that traditional 7-period day isn't working, and it's a struggle to get to that point and get them to believe in themselves and feel success with Apex. But it's a battle that I am extremely proud to hear and be a part of what's going on around, the office, because it's many people doing this. It's the student services, it's the Apex teachers, it's the board supporting. So know that we're mattering in kids' lives. That's what's important. At the expense sometimes of a % or 2 of a ranking, you better believe it. But a human being's life is being impacted. Yes,
2 questions. What's the pattern in this half of the year? Is there a similar pattern? January starts off strong and then February, March?
Yeah, it's a cyclical thing.
Okay, so then saying that, and you have a historical pattern here, shouldn't you sit down with the behavioralist and ask what can be done to break the October, November timeframe? What can be done to break the February, March? And anticipate, is there a pattern you can actually probably weed out and know the students that are going to increase that percent?
For sure.
I mean,
It's a great question.
you can play number games here and say if you correct October, November, and you correct March and February, we're gonna hit that goal.
At this point, this has actually brought it up. We've been in talks and dealing with this situation already. We're working on developing something that addresses those students right now with student services so we can catch them early. And I believe Beth has a meeting set up with you to discuss our problematic students. And when we get that information, it's going to carry over to us.
Or are there activities, a school-wide activities within those months that should re-energize? I'm just trying to.
No, I hear your question.
I'm not trying to
It's a great
solutionize, but I don't want to.
Typically, some of those, when you're talking about school-wide activities, some of those students, as Ms. Bosman said, are kind of that school-phobic. They don't want to be involved in some of those activities. They don't want to be involved in extracurricular activities. And truly, if they get involved in some sort of after-school activity, their attendance is going to be better. That's truly the answer.
So you're right, yes, what we're doing is we follow those students, we're tracking them, we're trying to be as proactive as possible. But there are some cases, like for example, as we refer to October, those 7 students were brand new to the district. That were hit on one of the violations.
We're
Now,
talking
as far as
attendance.
attendance, yeah, but as far as attendance, the same thing can happen. You have incoming students that you have yet to in a sense, identify and see that pattern yet. The ones we're able to capture are the ones we know. And those kids, when they start literally revisiting the same behavior, the same numbers, the same attendance patterns, it's a history with them that is that struggle. And so you connect with them one-on-one, you're constantly working with them and trying to literally implement every intervention you can. And with some, it's just, you could place everything in front of them, and they're just not gonna grab it. But you're never letting up because you just don't know which one it's gonna be. So we constantly loop back with those numbers and definitely look at the history to see if we can prevent. Because just because there's a history in any given month of a spike of attendance, doesn't mean you accept it. You try to identify it and figure out what caused that so you can avoid it. But that's a great question that we struggle with all the time in the office.
By far, the most significant difference, year over per month is the August, the start day. That was over 1% change. Do we have any idea what happened there? Were we getting a bunch of new people in, or?
With our drop,
Yeah.
I
mean, a change either way. That's the most significant one out of all the months.
Yes, and I was talking to Ms. Spry about that. We're trying to figure out how to break that data down. We haven't been able to figure out how to see where that is and see if there was transfer students that didn't make it. We're still looking at that data, and because that was my question too with Mrs. Spry. We're still working on that. So at this point, I can't give you that answer.
What's the definition of an attendance day? How many periods?
7 periods would be an attendance day.
So if they miss one, then it's a non-attendance day for the percentage?
No,
What's the
they have to be 5 hours in school, so they have to be here 5 periods.
Okay.
So I'm here 5 periods, or if I'm here 4 periods, it's a non-attendance day.
Yeah.
If I'm here 5, it's attendance day. I think that you set a goal because you want to try to achieve it. And right now, with the attendance at 94.06, it tells you that I need to do something different to make it happen. Status quo doesn't work, and I know that there's kids out there to do it, but that's the reason why we set goals like that, to make it happen. So what I'm saying to you is, and even, Gary said that a little bit too, is how can we rechange this around and make it work?
One of the things we're doing too in Apex for second semester is the kids are doing progress reporting sheets, so they're setting goals each week. And instead of just someone coming in and maybe sitting there and not really getting much accomplished, they're setting goals to say, this is what unit I'm on, and by Friday, this is where I want to be, and then we're holding them a little more accountable. I'm in there every day, even with students that I don't know very well. They see my face. I've had students stop by my room and say, okay, this is my issue. Math is a really hard class for me. I'm putting it off till last. I don't know what I'm going to do. I didn't pass math when I had 2 teachers in there. How am I going to do this by myself? So they're starting to stop by a little bit more and problem solve, and I think following through, setting goals. And then I told them I'm going to start looking at these sheets and seeing whether or not you're making some progress. Be individually accountable. Hopefully that will help, but I don't know. That's something we're establishing for second semester.
Right now, we have one person in there for 1 period, and technically, we have the academic support people help cover that. Is that an area that might be a possible intervention?
Yeah, that's one of the things I think that would help, and I know that even Ms. Montana has been up there tutoring kids individually with math, saying, let me know what you need. So I think for the kids to see that we're there to support them is helping, because a lot of the kids, I think, like you said, they don't want to be here. Attendance is an issue because they're failing, or they're failing because they don't come to school. I think they're starting to feel a little bit more supported. They're seeing kids be successful. I think when we had some of our 5th-year seniors graduate, that got some fire going for some of the other students to see that, hey, I can do this. So we're seeing some positive gains. We just haven't gotten everybody on board yet.
And I think now they're going to have their own room and their space. They were kind of shuffled around, and I think they were feeling kind of like stepchildren. And, also for some of these students that really struggle and have some family issues, there are particular times of the year that can be problematic for them. The holidays, times when other kids are feeling very excited, like around homecoming, and they're disengaged here, we see them hit a plateau or hit a wall in their success. But we're also, as Ms. Sullivan talked about, we are adding in some different steps into the APEX program because we just started with it, and it was kind of like, we're now trying to develop more of a program and use the behavioral interventionists to target kids and group kids that have like issues in order to help them try and come here and be more steady and regular with their attendance. So we feel like we had a huge meeting and we put some things together, and we feel like we'll be able to help with them second semester. But there are obviously other issues too that we can get on in order to try and get, bring up that daily attendance rate. We do need parent cooperation too on that, and calling their kids in and trying to get their kids here. And so those are issues we struggle with at times, even getting parents to respond to our phone calls, some of these parents.
Any other questions on attendance?
I just have one question on the program. The goal the board set, I would hope that the community looks at that as a proxy for graduation, not that we're driven by the number. Do they have a like an in-service or something where they see that you're really trying to let them leave with that paper in their hand, because that's going to open doors for them? I mean, that's what this is about. And do they see that if you don't have that paper, certain doors or certain opportunities just won't be available for them?
I think some of the students, it's sort of like a light will go on.
Okay.
Like, I've been in a couple of meetings with Mr. Sibley where he's had some very frank conversations with the students and their parents. And there was one student that I was chasing around all last year because he was my student, and then this year with Apex. And finally, when we had the meeting and it came to the fact that you could be dropped, you're not making progress, and it really affected him. And within the next week or so, he was stopping by my room every day, and I said, why the change? And he goes, I get it, I have to do something, I can't wait any longer. So I think we're having those conversations. Sometimes they're just not ready to hear it. They haven't gotten to that point
He's
yet,
been in
so.
school, and he is passing all his
He's
classes right
passing
now.
those classes.
Good. All right, any other on attendance? Let's move to discipline.
First, I'll ask, are there any questions? I mean, well, actually, let me retract this. There is a lot we're celebrating as far as the data and what's taking place in the building. It's really exciting to see the drug-related violations on a decrease. It has a lot to do with numerous things, the canine searches, the response we have to students who in fact have violated, in some cases, the law, and definitely the handbook, with either being under the influence or in possession of. And in cooperation with the local municipalities when those violations occur, they're pretty consistent on their application of a response, whether it's Brookfield Police Department or Riverside Police Department, depending on where the violation occurs. Because obviously the football, soccer field is in Brookfield, and we have, like, during certain events that are out there, that's where, you end up finding out that information. It's really exciting when we hear and see the verbal altercations on a decrease. We know that JKB is working with students on conflict resolution skills. That's really important for us to know that kids are getting it. They're using the office more. I actually turned to Lori and Neil last week and said, so when are you really supposed to be here? Because they're not in there for a period. And I'm like, all right, when are you supposed to be here? Because students are seeking out adults in high-ranking positions to intervene prior to the confrontation occurring, which speaks volumes to the, in my opinion, the communication that's taking place and the trust that kids are feeling with those adults. So those relationships are critical, and it speaks volumes to, are we speaking to them about attendance and their direct relation to graduation? 100%. We're doing the same with regards to discipline. And fighting is on a decrease. The fighting, the physical altercations, kids know we arrest you. And are some things on a rise? For sure. Bullying, and Mr. Duguetti and I spoke of this earlier. The reporting is on a rise, and I'd like to, if you don't mind sharing your thoughts on what you were, during our meeting, what you were saying about that.
Well, Mr. Special talks to the students during the cafeteria, and he explains to them about bullying, what bullying is, and what do you need to do if you see bullying. At any of the times when, during January, when Pam or Ms. Bilesman and Mr. Special speak to all the students at the grade level and at the beginning of the year, they explain to them if you do see bullying, if there's any sort of bullying, report it to the bullying website. And that's, and that kind of brings up that number of bullying cases before they actually have a chance to talk to those students, break it down, find out exactly what is going on, is it actually bullying, or is there just need to be some conflict resolution between the students? So that's kind of what we've got in for why it's up.
And as far as, the drugs and alcohol, obviously, the October month is what pushed that over. Without it, as we discussed.
Yes, it was just one bad night. Students made a bad choice, and since then, we haven't had any issues.
And the gross misconduct of 15 October was the incident.
Same things, the homecoming prank.
Just,
And you remove those two numbers, and we're not just saying just pull them. Is it a different total number? Well, yeah, like any incident is, but it is what it is. What I think is really exciting for the office and the student body and the staff is the fact that, when you look at these numbers, they are exciting that we are making a difference in getting our messages across. And I think it's really important that when Pam and I are speaking twice a year, that's part of what we're saying there. And then the consistent application of those messages across the board in classrooms and with the administrative team sitting in front of you has really mattered.
So that can correlate to the suspensions being up.
You bet. 100%. We've had a couple.
Those two incidents?
we've had, and then we had a couple students
Yeah.
who ended up being expelled. That's 10 days out before their
Yeah,
probation.
so we've had
That helped.
got a few high.
Expulsions up or down?
Expulsions.
They're up from last year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Up from last year.
Yeah, we had none last year.
0 to 1, right?
Any questions on discipline?
So I have 200 suspension days
Correct.
for a semester.
Correct.
So if you took 90 school days times 1,450 students, that's like 0.1%. Is that good for us?
If you look at it like that, yes, in my opinion, it is. And I'll tell you why. When we look at the type of offenses that we're addressing, they are creating classroom interruptions, and when we're addressing that, and the recidivism of those students, which isn't occurring, is what we're excited about. And unfortunately, everyone's not getting the message. If all of you sitting up at the board are students in the building, and you got, the first person got the first suspension, and student 4 down didn't, but then later, did you get her message? Well, each of you are gonna learn it, basically, in a sense, by doing, either watching. So what's taking place here, in our opinion, isn't this, oh my God, a learning environment is out of control and our numbers are too great. Do we want the numbers lower? For sure. And we try to keep them in school. What happens in some cases, and the in-school suspension room is an alternative that we use more so this year than ever, but you can't be disruptive in that environment. And some of these students, unfortunately, don't even want to be there. They want to be suspended. And we've been dealing with a few situations where we know that was the ultimate goal of the student. So when you look at the number 220, as far as the days, is it acceptable or good for us for what we're dealing with? I believe it is.
If you took out the October?
October is enormous. And I'll be honest with you, I was very impressed with the response of the student body to October and the message that was shared with us as administrators while just interacting with students. For some who were involved, not realizing how escalated it was, and others looking back going, it wasn't what it was supposed to be. So basically, not real pleased with it.
Any other questions on discipline?
2 questions, John, or
Yes, sir.
whomever. The days, is that in school and out of school, or is it?
No, these are out of school.
In which category did the days of suspensions fit in on the last report you show us with the?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah, the last report that shows attendance, which category did the suspensions fit into?
Our suspensions, where would they be?
There would be,
Are they excused?
they would be unexcused at this point, but I didn't put unexcused on here.
Oh,
Because a suspension
The days
does
of out-of-school suspension do count against your average daily attendance.
attendance.
So if you're fixing behavior, that's a way to improve your average daily attendance.
and so there's other days unexcused, aren't there?
Yeah, you could, unexcused absences would be suspensions and kids not showing up.
Like truants.
Yeah, truants, but that's put in there as cuts periods.
Oh, okay, So it'd be in the cuts period?
Yes. Matter of fact, as I'm looking at this, you're correct. They would be in the cuts period.
I was just trying to see, okay, thank you.
Any other questions on discipline? Thank you very much for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Keep on doing the great work, and let's get that number down to 95.